August 1940. Casino Estoril, Lisbon, Portugal, 11:47 p.m. Dusko Popov placed $50,000 in cash on the baccarat table. The entire casino fell silent. $50,000, more money than most Portuguese workers would earn in 10 lifetimes. The pile of bills sat there under the chandeliers, obscene in its enormity. The dealer, a thin man with a pencil mustache, stared at the money. "Sir, this is highly irregular. We need to verify you have the funds to cover this." "I have already deposited $100,000 with your cashier," Dusko said in perfect Portuguese. "Would you like to call him?" The dealer nodded to a floor manager. The manager disappeared. The other players at the table were watching Dusko with expressions somewhere between fascination and horror. This was not how gentlemen gambled. You did not put $50,000 on a single hand. You did not risk financial ruin on the turn of 2 cards. Dusko smiled. He was 28 years old, 6 feet tall, with dark hair slicked back in the fashion of the time. His tuxedo was custom-tailored in Savile Row and cost more than a new car. His cufflinks were platinum. His shoes were Italian leather. Everything about him screamed money and confidence and the kind of reckless disregard for consequences that came from never having experienced real poverty. Across the table sat a man Dusko had been watching all evening, short, nervous, sweating, despite the air conditioning. He had introduced himself as Stefan Blau, a Lithuanian businessman. But Dusko knew better. The man was Abwehr, German military intelligence. And this entire night had been a test. The Germans wanted to recruit Dusko Popov. They had been circling him for 3 months, ever since he arrived in Lisbon from Belgrade. They knew he was Yugoslav. They knew he was rich. They knew he had connections throughout Europe. What they did not know was whether he had the nerve to work for them, whether he could function under pressure, whether he would break when the stakes were real. So they had sent Blau to test him, to push him, to see if this wealthy playboy was actually serious or just another dilettante playing at danger. The floor manager returned and whispered to the dealer. The dealer nodded. "The bet is accepted." Blau was sweating harder now. He had $12,000 on the table, a substantial bet for him. Nothing compared to Dusko's 50,000. If Dusko won this hand, Blau would be wiped out, professionally embarrassed, and the Abwehr would know that their potential recruit had ice water in his veins. The dealer dealt the cards, 2 for Dusko, 2 for Blau. Dusko did not look at his cards immediately. He took a cigarette from his case, a gold cigarette case with his initials engraved in diamonds. He lit it slowly, took a drag, let the smoke curl toward the ceiling. Only then did he lift the corner of his cards. King of spades, 9 of hearts, 19, nearly perfect. He showed no reaction. His face was a mask. He could have been looking at garbage for all the emotion he displayed. Blau looked at his cards. His hand was shaking. Bad sign. The man had weak cards. Dusko could see it in his eyes. That moment of despair when you know you are beaten, but you cannot walk away because too much is riding on this. "Cards?" the dealer asked Blau. "1 card," Blau whispered. The dealer slid him a card. Blau looked at it. His face went white. Bust. He had gone over 21. He was done. "Sir?" The dealer looked at Dusko. "I stand," Dusko said calmly. The dealer revealed his own cards. 17. Not enough to beat Dusko's 19. The casino erupted. People were standing, pointing, shouting. $50,000. Dusko Popov had just won $50,000 on a single hand of baccarat. The dealer began stacking chips in front of him. Mountains of chips. Enough to buy 3 houses. Enough to live like a king for 5 years. Dusko reached across the table and shook Blau's hand. Thank you for the game. Blau's hand was clammy with sweat. You have nerve, he said quietly. More nerve than anyone I have ever met. It was only money, Dusko said. No, Blau leaned closer. It was a test, and you passed. 3 days later, Dusko received a message at his hotel, an invitation to lunch. The address was a private villa in the hills outside Lisbon. He went alone. No security, no backup. Just him and his Alfa Romeo convertible, driving up the winding coastal road with the Atlantic crashing on the rocks below. The villa was beautiful, white stone walls, bougainvillea growing up the sides, a terrace overlooking the ocean, and on that terrace, 3 men in civilian clothes drinking wine. The oldest man stood when Dusko arrived. He was maybe 55, silver-haired, with the bearing of a military officer trying to pretend he was not a military officer. Herr Popov, thank you for coming. I am Major Ludovico von Karsthoff, German military intelligence. I believe you know why we asked you here. You want me to spy for Germany? Dusko said. Von Karsthoff smiled. Direct. I appreciate that. Yes, we want you to work for us. You have extensive business contacts in Yugoslavia, Italy, France, and Britain. You speak 6 languages fluently. You move in social circles that include industrialists, politicians, and military officers. You are perfect for us. What makes you think I would betray my country? Dusko asked. Which country? Von Karsthoff gestured to a chair. Yugoslavia is torn apart. The government in Belgrade cannot decide whether to align with Germany or Britain. There will be a war there soon, a civil war, ugly, brutal. Your family's wealth will mean nothing when the partisans come. But if you help us, we can protect your family. We can guarantee their safety, their assets. Dusko sat down. This was the moment he had been preparing for since he first made contact with the British 3 weeks ago. I want to be paid, he said, handsomely. Von Karsthoff laughed. Of course, we do not expect you to work for ideology. We pay well, very well, $20,000 per month, plus expenses, plus bonuses for exceptional intelligence, $20,000 per month, $240,000 per year. A fortune. Dusko pretended to consider it. What would you want me to do? He asked. Travel, Von Karsthoff said. Live your normal life, attend parties, meet people, and report back to us. Names, connections, what factories are producing what ships are moving where. You would be amazed how much valuable intelligence can be gathered at cocktail parties by a man who knows how to listen. When would I start? Immediately. We have your first assignment ready. There is a British convoy assembling in Gibraltar. We need to know the departure date and the route. You have contacts in Gibraltar. Find out. Dusko nodded slowly. I will do it, but I need operational funds. $50,000. I need to maintain my lifestyle, or people will ask questions. Von Karsthoff pulled an envelope from his jacket. There is $60,000 here. Consider the extra $10,000 a signing bonus. Dusko took the envelope. It was heavy. He opened it. Stacks of American $100 bills. Clean, crisp, unmarked. We will contact you in 2 weeks, Von Karsthoff said. Same method as before, a message at your hotel. When you have the Gibraltar information, you will meet us here again. Dusko stood, shook hands, smiled, walked back to his car with $60,000 in German money in his jacket pocket. He drove straight to the British embassy. The British intelligence officer who met him was named Graham. Young, maybe 30, with the careful diction of someone who had attended Oxford and wanted you to know it. "Did they take the bait?" Graham asked. "Hook, line, and sinker," Dusko said. He dropped the envelope on the desk. $60,000. They want me to find out about Gibraltar convoy movements. Graham opened the envelope and whistled. "Well, that is real money. They are serious about you." "What do I tell them?" "Give them something real, but nothing current. We will provide you with information about a convoy that already sailed 2 weeks ago. Old intelligence. Useless, but verifiable. It will build your credibility." "And then?" "Then you keep doing exactly what you are doing. Accept their missions. Feed them intelligence that we provide. Become invaluable to them. And tell us everything they ask you. Every question reveals what they do not know, what they are planning, where their intelligence gaps are." Dusko lit a cigarette. "They will eventually want me to go to Britain, to infiltrate." "Excellent. When that happens, we will welcome you with open arms. You will be a German spy operating in London with full British knowledge. You will feed the Germans exactly what we want them to believe. It is called a double-cross operation. You will be working for us while the Germans think you are working for them." "What if they catch me?" "They will not catch you. We are very good at this." "What if they do?" Graham's smile faded. "Then you will be tortured for information and shot, probably in that order. This is not a game, Mr. Popov. If you are not fully committed, walk away now." Dusko stood up, straightened his tie. "I am committed, but I have one condition." "What?" "I want a code name, something memorable." Graham thought for a moment, then he smiled. "We will call you Tricycle." "Why Tricycle?" "Because of your reputation with women. We understand you prefer them in groups of 3. Dusko laughed. It was true. He did have that reputation. "Tricycle it is." That night, Dusko went to a nightclub in the Alfama district. It was the kind of place where diplomats and spies and arms dealers drank together and pretended not to recognize each other. The music was American jazz. The drinks were expensive. The women were beautiful. Dusko sat at the bar and ordered a vodka martini. He was on his 3rd drink when a woman sat down next to him. She was maybe 25, blonde, with the kind of face that belonged on movie posters. Her dress was red silk and cut low enough to be interesting, but not so low as to be obvious about it. "You are Dusko Popov," she said in German. "I am. I am Gerda. I work for Major von Karstoff. He sent me to keep an eye on you." "To spy on me?" "To make sure you are who you say you are, and to see if you can be trusted," Dusko smiled. "And how do you plan to determine that?" She leaned closer. Her perfume was French, expensive. "By spending time with you, by watching how you behave when you think no one is watching." "I am always watching," Dusko said, "and I am always aware that someone is watching me. That is what makes this interesting." They left the bar together at 2 in the morning, walked along the Tagus River. The city was quiet. The war felt very far away. "Why do you do this?" Gerda asked. "Do what?" "This work. You are rich. You could sit out the war in Switzerland or Argentina. Why risk everything?" Dusko thought about this. It was a good question. The honest answer was complicated. He hated the Nazis. His best friend from university was Jewish and had fled Germany in 1936 with stories that made Dusko physically ill. He believed Germany needed to be stopped. But that was not the only reason. The other reason was harder to admit. He loved the danger, loved the game, loved the feeling of walking into a room full of people who wanted to kill him and knowing that he was smarter than all of them. It was better than gambling, better than racing cars, better than anything. "I am bored," he said finally. "This is not boring." Gerda laughed. "You are either very brave or very stupid. Probably both." They reached her apartment at 3 in the morning. She invited him up. He went. They drank more, talked less. At some point, talking became unnecessary. Afterward, as Gerda slept, Dusko lay awake and thought about what he was doing. He was lying to the Germans, lying to this woman, living a life built entirely on deception. One mistake and everything would collapse. The Germans would discover he was working for the British. They would kill him. Probably torture him first to find out what he had revealed. His family in Yugoslavia would be arrested. His brother Ivo would die. But if he succeeded, he could feed the Germans false information that would save lives. He could help Britain win the war. He could make a difference. The next morning, Gerda woke up and smiled at him. "You are different than I expected." "How so?" "You are not just a playboy. There is something else, something darker." "Everyone has darkness," Dusko said. "Yes, but most people try to hide it. You use it." She was right. He did use it. The darkness was what made him good at this. 2 weeks later, von Karstoff was delighted with the Gibraltar intelligence. "This is excellent work, exactly what we needed. We have another mission for you. Bigger, more important." "What is it?" "We want you to go to Britain, London. We will provide you with contacts there, people who can help you. Your job will be to assess British military readiness, especially their air defenses. Can the RAF stop a German bombing campaign? This is vital intelligence for planning." "When do I leave?" 1 month. We need to prepare your documents, your legend, your cover story. In the meantime, continue building your network here in Lisbon." Dusko reported this to Graham immediately. The British were ecstatic. "This is perfect. When you arrive in London, we will have an entire support operation ready. You will feed the Germans a complete picture of British air defenses. Except everything will be false, exaggerated. We will make them think we are stronger than we are. It will make them cautious, delay their bombing campaign, buy us time. What if they verify my information? They cannot verify it. They have no other sources in London at this level. You will be their golden goose. They will believe everything you tell them because they want to believe it." December 1940. Dusko arrived in London. It was cold, gray. The city was still recovering from the Blitz. Buildings were damaged. Windows were blown out. People walked through the streets with that particular expression of exhausted determination that comes from being bombed night after night and choosing to go on anyway. The Germans had given him 3 contacts in London. Dusko reported all 3 to MI6 immediately. They were arrested within 24 hours, quietly. No publicity. The Germans never knew. For the next 6 months, Dusko lived in London as a German spy with British protection. He stayed at the Savoy Hotel, ate at the finest restaurants that were still operating, attended parties, met people, and sent regular reports to the Germans describing British air defenses, troop movements, industrial production. Every single piece of information was false. Carefully constructed lies designed to mislead and confuse. The Germans ate it up. They promoted him, gave him more money, trusted him completely. In March 1941, his brother Ivo arrived in Lisbon. The Germans had recruited him too. Ivo was 25, younger than Dusko, more idealistic. He hated the Nazis even more than Dusko did. Their father had been arrested by the Gestapo in Belgrade and beaten so badly he lost sight in one eye. Dusko met Ivo in a cafe on the Avenida da Liberdade. They embraced. Then Dusko said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I am working for the British. I am a double agent. Everything I send to the Germans is false. If you are going to work for the Germans, you need to know this. And you need to decide right now whose side you are really on." Ivo stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "I am already working for the British. They recruited me 2 months ago." Dusko started laughing. He could not help it. Both brothers, both double agents, both lying to the same people. The absurdity was overwhelming. "We have to coordinate," Dusko said. "If we both send contradictory information, they will know something is wrong. I know, the British already told me. You are the primary agent. I am your backup. Anything I report has to match what you report. They will give me the information to pass along. All coordinated." That night, the two brothers got drunk in Dusko's hotel room and laughed about the fact that they were living the most dangerous lie imaginable and doing it together. If the Germans discovered the truth, both brothers would die. Their entire family would be targeted, but they were committed. They were in this together. July 1941. Von Karstoff called an emergency meeting. He looked stressed, tired. The war in Russia was not going well. The Americans were edging closer to entering the war. Germany needed better intelligence. "We have a special mission for you," von Karstoff said. "We need you to go to America, New York. The Americans are not in the war yet. They are still neutral, but they are helping Britain, sending supplies, building weapons. We need to know their industrial capacity, their military readiness, whether they are preparing to enter the war." "When do I leave?" "Immediately. We have arranged a visa for you. You will travel as a Yugoslav businessman, legitimate, legal. You will have business meetings, make contacts, and gather intelligence." Von Karstoff handed him a small compact, a woman's makeup compact, gold, expensive looking. "What is this?" "Open it." Dusko opened the compact. Inside was a mirror and a powder puff. Nothing unusual. "Look closer at the hinge." Dusko examined the hinge. There was a tiny piece of paper inserted there. He pulled it out carefully. It was microfilm, smaller than his fingernail. "This is your questionnaire," von Karstoff said. "Everything we need you to find out. It is photographically reduced. You will need a magnifying device to read it." Dusko held the microfilm up to the light. He could barely make out tiny text. "How many questions?" "Over 200, industrial production, military bases, ship movements, everything. But there is one section that is especially important." Von Karstoff pointed to a specific part of the microfilm. "This section, questions about Pearl Harbor, the American naval base in Hawaii." Dusko felt his stomach tighten. Pearl Harbor. Why would the Germans care about Pearl Harbor? "What kind of questions?" "Very specific questions. The depth of the harbor, the exact location of fuel storage, the positioning of anti-aircraft defenses, the schedule of ship movements, whether the ships are anchored close together or spread out. These questions came directly from our Japanese allies. They are planning something big. I do not know what, but they need this information desperately." Dusko stared at the microfilm. Pearl Harbor. The Japanese were planning something, and the Germans wanted him to collect the intelligence to make it possible. "I will get you everything," he said. He took the compact and left. Went straight to the British embassy, showed them the microfilm, explained what von Karstoff had said about Pearl Harbor. The British officer went pale. "The Japanese are planning to attack Pearl Harbor. This confirms it. We suspected, but this confirms it. What do I do?" Go to America. Give this to the FBI immediately. Warn them. This could prevent a catastrophe. August 10th, 1941. Dusko Popov arrived in New York City. He checked into a suite at the Waldorf Astoria, called the FBI, asked for a meeting, said it was urgent, about national security. They sent 2 agents the next morning, young, professional, unimpressed by his suite at the Waldorf. Dusko showed them the microfilm, explained about Pearl Harbor, explained that the Japanese were gathering intelligence for an attack. The agents took notes, said they would pass it up the chain. Dusko gave them everything, the entire questionnaire, the specific questions about harbor depth and fuel storage and ship positioning. 3 days later, he was summoned to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., to meet with Director J. Edgar Hoover personally. J. Edgar Hoover's office felt more like a courtroom than a room in a government building. The furniture was heavy, dark, and perfectly aligned. The desk was spotless, not a single paper out of place. The American flag and the Department of Justice flag stood in the corner like silent judges. The only thing that looked vaguely human was the coffee cup on Hoover's desk, and even that sat on its saucer at a perfect angle. Dusko Popov sat in the chair opposite the desk and watched the man behind it study his file. Hoover did not rush. He turned each page slowly, precisely, as if the act of reading itself was a form of interrogation. He did not offer a handshake, did not offer a drink, did not offer a smile. Hoover finally closed the folder and looked up. His eyes were cold and flat and calculating. He was shorter than Dusko had expected, with slicked hair and a tight mouth that looked like it forgot how to laugh sometime around 1925. "Mr. Popov," he said, "you have created quite a stir." "That was not my intention," Dusko replied. Hoover ignored the answer. "You claim to be working as an agent for German military intelligence." "I am," Dusko said. "You also claim to be working for British intelligence." "I am." "And now you wish to work for us." "No," Dusko said. "I wish to warn you. There is a difference." A muscle tightened in Hoover's jaw. He did not like being corrected. "Tell me again about this supposed warning." Dusko reached into his jacket slowly. The 2 FBI agents standing by the door shifted their weight, ready to move, hands near their holsters. Dusko extracted the gold compact and set it on the desk. He opened it with deliberate care, removed the tiny strip of microfilm from the hinge, and placed it on a blank sheet of white paper. "You have seen this already," Dusko said. "Your agents in New York examined it, but I will say it again, for the record, so there is no misunderstanding." He leaned forward slightly. "The Germans gave me this microfilm. It contains a questionnaire from their Japanese allies. The questions concern military and industrial targets in the United States. Most of it is standard espionage, factories, shipyards, airfields. But this section," he tapped one corner of the microfilm with his fingertip, "this section is different. It is focused entirely on one place, Pearl Harbor." Hoover did not look at the microfilm. He kept his eyes on Dusko. "And what do these questions ask?" "The precise depth of the harbor at different points, the exact locations of the battleships when they are in port, the positioning of anti-aircraft guns, the number of patrol aircraft stationed nearby, the location of fuel storage tanks, and how tightly the ships are moored together. They are not asking these questions for curiosity. They are collecting targeting data." Hoover picked up the sheet with the microfilm, held it up to the light, and squinted. He still refused to show any reaction. And you concluded from this that Japan intends to attack this base, he said. Yes, Dusko said. They are planning something. You do not ask for harbor depths and ship positions unless you are thinking about sending torpedoes and bombs. Where did this questionnaire originate? From German intelligence. It was given to them by their Japanese liaison. The Japanese cannot operate freely in America, so they are using German channels. I am one of those channels. They believe I am their agent. I am telling you what they asked me to do. Hoover set the paper down and folded his hands on the desk. You understand, Mr. Popov, that what you are suggesting is an act of war. Japan is currently a neutral country. So is the United States. You are claiming that a neutral nation is planning a surprise attack on American territory. That is an extraordinary assertion. It is also true, Dusko said. Hoover's eyes hardened. I will decide what is true. For a moment, the room was very quiet. Dusko could hear the faint ticking of a clock on the wall and the distant murmur of typewriters out in the hallway. He realized he was holding his breath and forced himself to exhale slowly. Hoover opened the file again and flipped to a different section. You have quite a reputation, Mr. Popov, son of a wealthy Yugoslav industrialist, expensive education, law degree, fluent in multiple languages. You are known to gamble large sums in European casinos. You have a history with married women, actresses, and models. More than one duel has been fought because of you. Is that accurate? Mostly, Dusko said. Some of the duels were not my fault. One corner of Hoover's mouth twitched downward. You think this is amusing? I think war is many things, Director, Dusko said. Amusing is not one of them. Hoover tapped the file with a finger. You expect me to take seriously the warning of a man who behaves like this, who lives like this. How I live has nothing to do with the truth of what I am telling you, Dusko replied. Your enemies do not care whether your informants dress properly or gamble too much. They care whether your ships are lined up neatly in a shallow harbor where torpedoes can find them. The two men stared at each other across the desk. Hoover was used to people shrinking before his gaze. Dusko did not shrink. He had stared at German officers who would have happily ordered his execution. He had walked into rooms where one wrong word meant a bullet in the back of the head. J. Edgar Hoover was dangerous, but in a different way. Hoover closed the file again. This is how I see it, Mr. Popov. You are a foreign national engaged in espionage activities on American soil. You claim to work for two opposing intelligence services simultaneously. You live in a hotel suite that costs more per month than my best agents make in a year. You gamble, drink excessively, and keep company with women of questionable reputation. You are precisely the sort of man who can be bought, and you expect me to believe you are giving me this information out of the goodness of your heart. I am giving you this information because every ship sunk in Pearl Harbor is a victory for your enemies, Dusko said. And because a burning battleship looks the same whether it is British, American, or Yugoslav. There will be men screaming inside those ships, men who will never go home. If I can prevent that, I will. Hoover's expression did not change. You could also be feeding me a story on the orders of British intelligence. They want us to join the war. They have been trying for a year. Perhaps this is their latest trick. Send a charming foreign playboy with a piece of microfilm and an apocalyptic warning to scare us into action. That is not what this is, Dusko said. Hoover leaned forward slightly. Prove it. Send someone to Pearl Harbor, Dusko said immediately. An officer you trust. Have him verify the questions on the microfilm. Compare them with actual conditions on the ground. He will see that the questions are precise, technical. They are not propaganda. They are targeting data. Hoover shook his head. We do not redeploy naval intelligence assets every time a foreign spy walks into my office with a story. I am not every foreign spy, Dusko said. The Germans trust me. They have trusted me for over a year. They are feeding me their most sensitive tasks. They do that because I have never given them reason to doubt me. I am risking my life telling you this. If they ever discover I met with you, I will not make it to a courtroom. Hoover stood up abruptly. You are not in a European casino now, Mr. Popov. This is not a game. This is the United States of America. We do not dance to foreign tunes, not British, not German, not anyone's. I will not allow my bureau to be manipulated into starting a war on the word of a man who spends his nights in nightclubs and his days in bed. The words hit with more force than any shout could have. Calm, icy, absolute. You are making a mistake, Dusko said softly. A deadly one. Perhaps, Hoover said. If this proves to be credible, it will be addressed through proper channels. In the meantime, you will remain in the United States under strict observation. You will not conduct any so-called espionage activities for any country without my authorization. Is that understood? I work for British intelligence, Dusko said. Not for you. Hoover's eyes narrowed. Let me make something clear. In my country, I decide who is a spy and who is a criminal. Right now, you are 1 inch away from being charged with multiple violations of federal law. You will do exactly as you are told, or you will spend the rest of this war in a prison cell. The 2 agents by the door took a step forward. Dusko understood the message. This man could ruin him without raising his voice. Then charge me, Dusko said quietly, or listen to me, but do not pretend that ignoring this will make it go away. Hoover's face hardened. This meeting is over. He turned away and began rearranging papers on his desk, already treating Dusko as if he no longer existed. The agents opened the door. Dusko stayed seated for 3 more seconds. He wanted to say something else, something that would punch through Hoover's arrogance. He imagined leaning over the desk and spelling it out in brutal detail. The black smoke over a tropical harbor, the burning oil on the water, the sailors trapped below deck as the hull filled with water and fire. But he knew it would not matter. Hoover was not refusing to understand. He was refusing to be told. Dusko stood. The chair legs scraped against the polished floor. He picked up the empty compact and slid it back into his pocket. The microfilm remained on the desk. You do not have to like me, he said. You do not have to respect me. But you should fear what the Japanese are planning more than you fear being embarrassed by the British. Hoover did not look up. Outside the office, the corridor felt strangely airless. The 2 agents escorted him to the lobby in silence. One of them, the younger of the 2, glanced at him as they reached the elevator. Off the record, the agent said quietly. Do you really think they will attack? Yes, Dusko said. How sure? Sure enough that when it happens, I will remember standing in that office and watching your director choose pride over survival. The agent looked away. The elevator doors opened. Dusko stepped inside. Back in New York, the FBI placed him under surveillance. He noticed the tails within 24 hours. Men who always bought their newspaper at the same kiosk he used. A figure lingering across the street from the Waldorf Astoria every evening, pretending to admire the facade. A new guest on his hotel floor who never seemed to sleep. If it had been the Germans, he would have been worried. German surveillance meant immediate danger. American surveillance was different, clumsy, heavy-handed. It was not designed to protect him. It was designed to keep him on a leash. The Germans, meanwhile, were impatient for results. One afternoon in September 1941, Dusko met with his German handler in a quiet corner of Central Park. The man's name was Johann Nikolaus Ritter, an Abwehr officer working under diplomatic cover. Ritter fed the ducks with mechanical motions while they talked. It was a nice touch. Two men feeding ducks. Friendly, harmless, easy to ignore. "Berlin is pleased with your initial reports," Ritter said. "But they want more. They want specifics, names of factories, production numbers. You have been here for weeks. They expected more by now." "I have only just established myself," Dusko said. "America is not Europe. Everything is bigger, slower. It takes time to make the right contacts." "Time is not a luxury we have," Ritter said. "The Führer expects results. Our Japanese friends expect results. They are eager to receive the information on Pearl Harbor." Dusko watched a duck dive and surface again. "And if I tell you that American counterintelligence is watching me day and night?" Ritter shrugged. "Then be more careful. Change your routines. You are supposed to be good at this, Popov. That is why we pay you." "They have already questioned me," Dusko said. "The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the director himself." Ritter stopped feeding the ducks. "Hoover?" "Yes." "What did you tell him?" "The truth," Dusko said. "That I am working for Germany, that I am here under your orders, that I am supposed to collect information for Japan about Pearl Harbor." For a moment, Ritter's face froze. Then he laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You told the head of American counterintelligence that you are our agent, and you are still free." "Yes." "What did he do?" "Nothing," Dusko said. "He does not believe me, or he believes me and chooses to ignore it. I am not sure which is worse." Ritter stared at him. "You are serious." "I am." Ritter shook his head slowly. "The incompetence of these people is astonishing. We keep waiting for the Americans to wake up. Perhaps they never will." He threw the rest of the bread into the pond. The ducks swarmed around it. "Very well," Ritter said. "Continue your work. Send what you can. Be discreet. Berlin will be informed that the Americans are aware of your presence, but not taking action. That is useful in itself." That night, Dusko sat alone in his suite at the Waldorf. The city hummed 20 floors below. Traffic, horns, distant music. New York was alive in a way no European city could be during war. The lights were on. The restaurants were full. People argued about baseball and movie stars and the price of gasoline. Somewhere in Hawaii, sailors were going to sleep on ships that felt safe because the war was far away. On the coffee table lay a copy of the microfilm questionnaire. The British had made a blow-up print for him to study. He had read it so many times he could recite sections from memory. Question 72. Average depth of Pearl Harbor anchorage area at low tide. Question 73. Average depth of approach channel. Is dredging required to allow deep draft ships to enter? Question 76. Distance between moored capital ships in Battleship Row. Question 81. Are anti-torpedo nets used around anchored ships? If so, how often deployed? Question 85. Distance from main fuel tank farm to battleship anchorage. He poured himself a drink. The sound of ice against glass seemed too loud in the quiet suite. He pictured Pearl Harbor when he had last seen it, years earlier on a peacetime trip. Blue water, palms, white uniforms, sailors laughing on the deck. A postcard version of war, training flights and band practice and weekend liberty in Honolulu. Now he imagined the same harbor filled with smoke and fire, bombs falling, torpedoes streaking under the surface, men trapped below deck as water rushed in. He had done everything he could within the system. He had warned the FBI. He had met with Hoover himself. He had laid out the danger in clear, specific terms. He could not force them to act. But the knowledge sat in his chest like a weight. He wrote a report for the British that night. It was more personal than his usual communications. The Americans have been warned in explicit detail. Their bureau chief chose to treat this as a British manipulation rather than a genuine threat. I have done what I can. If Pearl Harbor is attacked, history will not be able to claim they were surprised, only that they decided not to believe the messenger. He hesitated before adding the last sentence. I hope I am wrong. He was not. Through the rest of August and into September, life in New York continued its strange double reality. By day, Dusko attended business luncheons and cocktail parties, listening for useful scraps of information about American production capacity and military mood. By night, he drank in clubs and danced with actresses whose biggest fear was a bad review in the morning paper. Sometimes, in the middle of a crowded room, he would feel a sudden, sharp disconnect. He would hear laughter, see glasses clinking, watch people flirting under chandeliers, and imagine instead the sound of air raid sirens and the glow of fires on the horizon. Europe and America existed on different planets. On one, cities burned. On the other, people argued about who should have won the last boxing match. One evening in October, at a party in a Fifth Avenue penthouse, a Wall Street banker slapped him on the shoulder. Europe is finished, the man said. Whole continent gone mad. But it is not our problem. We sell them steel. We sell them oil. Let them tear each other apart. We will still be standing when the dust settles. Dusko looked at the man and decided not to waste breath. What could he say? That war did not respect oceans? That torpedoes did not care about stock prices? That somewhere in Tokyo, men were studying harbor depths in Hawaii? The man would not believe him any more than Hoover had. In late November, British intelligence sent a coded message. It was simple and direct. No change in American posture detected. Your warning noted. Continue deceptive work against Germans. Do not attempt further direct pressure on U.S. authorities. In other words, you tried. They did not listen. Get back to the main job. Dusko obeyed. He continued to feed Berlin with carefully crafted half-truths and misinformation about American production and British strength. Ritter congratulated him on every report. The money kept coming. The German trust deepened. Inside, something in Dusko had begun to sour. He still enjoyed the game, but there was a taste of ash in it now. It was December 7th, 1941, New York City, 12:23 p.m. The hotel room was unusually quiet. No telephone ringing, no room service knocking, no jazz record playing on the gramophone. Just the distant hum of the city 20 floors below and the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. Dusko Popov sat in an armchair by the window with a copy of the New York Times on his lap. He had read the same paragraph 3 times without absorbing a word. The article was about a boxing match. Heavyweights, points decision. The kind of thing Americans cared about when the rest of the world was on fire. He tossed the paper aside and stood, poured himself a drink. It was barely past noon, but he no longer cared what time it was when he drank. Time felt increasingly irrelevant anyway. He had done his part, given his warning, been dismissed. All that was left now was waiting to see whether the universe would prove him wrong. The radio on the side table was turned off. He stared at it for a moment, then crossed the room and switched it on. It crackled to life, filling the suite with the warm, fuzzy sound of dance music from some Manhattan studio. A cheerful voice promised more hits after the break. He turned the volume down and walked back to the window. Outside, New York gleamed in the winter sun. Yellow taxis crawled along Park Avenue. Well-dressed men hurried into office buildings, briefcases in hand. Women in fur coats flagged down cabs, heading to lunch or shopping or both. For them, the war was an ocean away, a newspaper headline, a topic for dinner conversation, not something that could reach out and burn them. On the dresser, beside a silver cigarette case, lay the blown-up copy of the Pearl Harbor questionnaire. The British had asked him if he wanted it back or destroyed after they had photographed it. He had kept it. No one could explain why that bothered him so much. They filed intelligence by the ton. To them, it was just paper. To him, it was a prediction. Question 72. Question 73. Question 81. He could see them in his mind as clearly as if the sheet were in front of him. He lit a cigarette and tried to imagine, one last time, that he was wrong. That the Japanese would decide the risk was too great. That the admirals would hesitate. That someone, somewhere, in some office like Hoover's, would see the same danger he saw and quietly, without fuss, move the ships out of the trap. The music on the radio stopped. A new voice cut in, urgent and tight. We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The glass slipped from Dusko's hand. It hit the carpet and rolled, whiskey sloshing over the rim. Flash, Washington. The White House has just announced that Japanese aircraft have attacked the United States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, by air. Repeat, Japanese aircraft have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The room shrank. The clock ticked louder. The sound of the city faded to nothing. The announcer continued talking, words tripping over each other in his haste. Details were sketchy, casualty numbers unknown, several ships reported hit, planes still in the air, anti-aircraft fire, smoke. Dusko did not move. The cigarette burned down between his fingers until the ember reached his skin. The pain brought him back. He dropped it in an ashtray and crushed it out with more force than necessary. The radio voice stumbled over a phrase. This attack appears to have been a complete surprise. Dusko laughed once, a sharp, broken sound. Surprise. That was the word they would use. An act falling from a clear blue sky. No warning, no hint. He crossed the room, almost stumbling over the puddle of whiskey on the carpet, and turned the volume up. The announcer repeated the bulletin, then repeated it again. Each time the words sounded more unreal. Japanese aircraft, Pearl Harbor, surprise. He saw not the harbor itself, but Hoover's office, the perfect desk, the flags, the microfilm on the white sheet of paper under the harsh overhead light. You expect me to take seriously the warning of a man who behaves like this? He walked to the dresser, opened the top drawer, and pulled out the enlarged copy of the questionnaire. The question stared up at him in cold, typed lines. Average depth of Pearl Harbor anchorage. Are anti-torpedo nets used? Distance from fuel storage to moored battleships. He gripped the paper so tightly his knuckles went white. For a moment, he thought about tearing it in half, shredding it, burning it in the ashtray until nothing remained but black flakes. As if that would change anything. As if destroying the paper could retroactively erase the warning and absolve everyone who had ignored it. He let the sheet drop back onto the dresser. The telephone on the nightstand rang. Once, twice, 3 times. He stared at it, then picked it up. Yes. Popov? It was Graham, the British officer in New York. His voice was raw. You heard? Yes, Dusko said. There was a brief silence on the line, filled with static and distant voices from the hotel switchboard. We are getting preliminary reports from Honolulu, Graham said. It is bad, very bad. Battleships burning, airfields smashed. They caught them at anchor. He swallowed audibly. It is almost exactly what was feared. What was feared, Dusko repeated flatly. Not what was predicted, not what was described in detail 4 months ago. What was feared. Now is not the time for that, Graham said. War has been declared. Everything changes. No, Dusko said. Everything stays exactly the same. Men in offices ignore information that does not fit their prejudices, and other men die because of it. That is how this works. Listen to me, Graham said. We are going to need you more than ever. The Germans and Japanese will be coordinating more closely. You are one of the few people who has been inside that channel. Your work is not over. My work was warning them, Dusko said. I did that. What I see on my radio now is what happens when a warning is treated as an inconvenience. He realized his free hand was shaking. He pressed it flat against the dresser to steady it. You did what you could, Graham said. None of this is on you. That is not how it feels. There was another pause. When Graham spoke again, his voice was a little softer. Do you want to know what Hoover is doing right now? No. He is probably drafting a statement about enemy treachery and unimaginable surprise. He will do everything in his power to make sure no one ever finds your name in this story. I know, Dusko said. He decided 4 months ago that I was a problem to be contained, not a source to be listened to. I do not expect him to change now. Graham cleared his throat. We will talk later. There will be new instructions. For now, stay put. And Popov. Yes. For what it is worth, London knows you warned them. Whatever Washington says publicly, your report exists. On paper. In our files. Paper cannot pull men out of burning ships, Dusko said. He hung up without waiting for a reply. The radio continued to pour details into the room. Accounts from Honolulu. A senator demanding retaliation. A commentator talking about a day that will live in infamy before anyone had actually coined the phrase. Dusko walked into the bathroom, turned on the tap, and splashed cold water on his face. When he looked up, the man in the mirror looked older than he had that morning. The lines around his eyes were deeper. There was a tightness around his mouth that had not been there yesterday. You tried, he told his reflection. The words sounded hollow even as he said them. He dried his face, went back into the bedroom, and opened the nightstand drawer. Inside, under a stack of hotel stationery, was a small automatic pistol. British issue, a precaution, a tool. He took it out and sat on the edge of the bed, the gun resting on his knees. It was a simple thing, metal and oil, weight, potential. He did not point it at his head. He did not point it at the window or the door. He just held it, feeling the solidity of it in his hands. It represented something he understood, simple cause and effect. Pull the trigger, something happens. Immediate, predictable, unambiguous. The rest of his life did not work like that. He had pulled every metaphorical trigger he could in this situation. Walked into the very heart of American law enforcement with a loaded dossier and put it on the desk. The effect had been nothing. Or rather, the effect had been delayed, indirect, and directed at someone else thousands of miles away. He set the gun back in the drawer and closed it. For the rest of the day, he wandered the city. He needed movement. Stillness made the voice in his head louder. In a bar near Times Square, the bartender turned every radio to the news. The customers listened with slack faces as the casualty estimates grew. Destroyers hit. Battleships capsized. Over 2,000 dead, the announcer said at one point. No one knew the exact figure yet. A man at the end of the bar slammed his fist on the counter. "Those Japanese bastards," he shouted, "attacking us without warning." Without warning. Dusko finished his drink and left. On the street, newspaper boys shouted headlines. "Japs bomb Hawaii. War. War." He bought an evening edition. The paper was still wet from the press. The front page showed a file photo of battleships at anchor in Pearl Harbor, peaceful in the sun. The caption had been hastily updated to mention the attack. The image was a lie now. Those ships were not calm steel against blue water anymore. They were twisted wreckage under a sky filled with smoke. He walked until his feet hurt. The city lights came on. Somewhere, people were still going to the theater and to dinner because tickets had been bought weeks ago and life did not know how to stop on command. That night, back in his suite, he poured himself another drink and did not bother with ice. He stood by the window and looked down at the city that had just discovered it was at war. He thought about resigning, about calling Graham and telling him that he was finished, that he had reached the limit of what he could do for people who refused to help themselves. But every time he followed that thread to its end, he saw something else. German officers in Berlin raising glasses in celebration. Japanese planners marking targets on new maps. Abwehr handlers complaining that their sources in America had dried up. He imagined Ritter's face when some functionary told him, "Our agent Popov has left. He became upset when the Americans did not listen to his warning." It would be exactly the sort of story the Germans loved. The sentimental weakness of the Allies. Emotions over duty. No, if he was going to quit, it would not be now, when his access was at its highest value. He sat at the desk and began to write a new report for London. The first page was factual, updated details from the broadcasts, public statements from American officials, observations on the mood in the city. Then he added a paragraph that was not strictly professional. They will sell this day as a bolt from the blue. It was not. They were told in August, in this very town, by an enemy agent risking his life to stand in their office. They chose to ignore it because the messenger did not fit their idea of a trustworthy man. I intend to make sure that, at least in our files, the record does not lie. He signed it with his code name, Tricycle. In Berlin, the news of Pearl Harbor shifted the entire strategic landscape. Germany declared war on the United States. Japan, Germany, and Italy now stood formally together against the Allies. Intelligence channels thickened. The Abwehr's value went up. So did Dusko's. Suddenly, his German handlers saw him as more important than ever. He was the man on the ground in the enemy's newly declared main adversary. Their expectations and their trust doubled overnight. In January 1942, Ritter met him again, this time in a discreet back room of a German-friendly restaurant. "You were right," Ritter said, "about the Americans. They sleep until someone slaps them. Then they roar. The Führer is not worried. He believes we can defeat them with Japan's help. But there is concern in the staff. They know what American industry can do when awakened." He raised his glass. "To you, Popov, the man who walks among the Americans and feeds us their secrets." Dusko touched his glass to Ritter's. "To secrets." Inside, He thought of the microfilm lying somewhere in an FBI file drawer, marked and ignored. He thought of sailors trapped under decks they had trusted to be safe. If his disgust showed on his face, Ritter misread it as something else. "This is good for us," Ritter continued. "The American declaration of war removes constraints. Everything is now legitimate. We can exploit all channels without fear of diplomatic complications." "Everything is legitimate," Dusko repeated. It sounded too familiar. He left the restaurant with a renewed sense of purpose, but it was different from the bright, almost playful thrill he had felt when he began this life. The game was no longer theoretical. It had always been real for London and Belgrade. Now it was real for Honolulu, too. In the months that followed, Dusko's role expanded. Berlin asked more questions. They wanted details on American shipbuilding schedules, aircraft production, convoy routes. They still wanted occasional updates on Pearl Harbor, but those were now secondary. The attack had happened. The harbor depths and fuel tank locations were no longer abstract data points. They were a crime scene. British intelligence, seeing how the Germans leaned on him, pulled Dusko deeper into their deception operations. They gave him numbers inflated here, deflated there. Paintings of Allied strength that were part truth, part illusion. Some nights, after a day of lying to Germans and writing careful half-truths to London, he would sit alone and feel an odd sense of fracture. There was the man the Germans believed in, disciplined, relentless, ideologically steady. There was the man the British used, cunning, flexible, willing to bend reality to strategic need. And then there was the man who had stood in Hoover's office and spoken plainly until his words hit a wall. He no longer knew which of those three was closest to the truth. Years later, when the war was over and the world had moved on to new enemies and new anxieties, a journalist asked him a question during an interview in a quiet French cafe. "People say you could have prevented Pearl Harbor," the journalist said. "What do you say to that?" Dusko was older then. The dark hair had gone silver at the temples. The lines around his eyes were permanent. He stirred his coffee before answering. "I warned the people whose duty it was to prevent it," he said. Clearly, repeatedly, in detail. They chose not to act. I did not control the fleet. I did not command the air defenses. I was just the messenger who did not look the way they thought a messenger of doom should look. The journalist hesitated. "Do you ever feel guilty?" "Every day," Dusko said, "because knowing something terrible is coming and failing to stop it feels like complicity, even when you have done everything in your power. But guilt and responsibility are not always the same thing." "Do you blame Hoover personally?" Dusko looked out the window at the street. A boy on a bicycle rode past, laughing. The war felt very far away. "I blame him for choosing his own pride over information that could have saved lives," he said. "But history is not written in single names. It is written in systems. Hoover was the embodiment of a system that trusts only what looks like itself. Men like me do not fit inside that frame. So, when we bring inconvenient truths, we are treated as troublemakers, not warnings." The journalist leaned forward. "And yet you continued. After Pearl Harbor, after they ignored you, you kept working with the British. You kept deceiving the Germans. Why?" "Because the alternative was letting the people who had already proven themselves blind run the board unchecked," Dusko said. "Once you have seen how careless they can be with lives, you either walk away in disgust or you stay and try to offset the damage in any way you can. Walking away would have been easier. I chose the harder option." "Some say you were the model for James Bond," the journalist said, changing tack. Did you know that Ian Fleming used you as inspiration? Dusko.